Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or good evening, or whatever time it may be for you. Welcome to something a little bit different. That is another deck list. More specifically, another Earth Machine deck list. Yeah, I know I made one of these already. I made one for YCS London. This one's a bit different. This one is post Cyberstorm Access. And if you guys know anything about Cyberstorm Access and what it gives us the new Superheavy Samurai support. And as you can probably tell by a lot of what's going on in the current meta, Superheavy Samurai has been doing the fucking rounds, and it has been doing very, very well. And I am going to show you what my spin on this, thanks to the help of a couple of people, is on this deck. This is going to be a long one, so please sit back, relax, grab any food or any drink you need, and let's get right into the deck list. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting with the Machina package. But before we go any further, I would like to give you a quick amount of backstory about this new version of the deck. Because of the Superheavy Samurai part of the deck, this is now a weird monster mash deck that actually plays only 3 spells and traps. But I will explain those once I eventually get to them. And we're going to start this deck profile with the Machina package. We are going to simply start with still the generic ratios. We're going to start with 3 gear frame. Gear frame in this deck is just as good as it used to be within the other version of the deck, because it still gets you quite far into your combo. It doesn't get you the massive amounts of combo that you would like, especially in this version of the deck, but it does get you far. Then we have still the one Machina Unclasper. Unclasper now plays a bigger role in going full combo in this deck, because it allows you to set up the Machina Citadel at the end of your combo with the help of Sargaz, Anger Knuckle, and a couple of other cards. Then one of the other weird normal summons that I haven't made a lot of use of yet, that's 3 Machina Metal Cruncher. Metal Cruncher in this deck is a lot better, as it allows you to just reveal 3 cards from your deck. Your opponent picks one at random, but you can literally just reveal 3 copies of the same card. So a lot of the time, if you normal summon this, you were to reveal 3 of the new Superheavy Samurai motorbike, which then allows you just to go through Superheavy Samurai combos. Then for the last final 3 monsters in this version of the deck, we have 1 Machina Fortress, then obviously the 1 Machina Citadel like we normally play, and then obviously the final level 10 that we summon every now and again, Machina Ruin Force. These cards aren't really needed like Machina Fortress and Machina Ruin Force aren't needed in this version of the deck, and sometimes can be a bit of a detriment if you have them but you don't want to use them. But in a lot of instances, these cards do come up quite a lot. But Ruin Force, not as much, because you end on a literal full board already enough as is. You don't particularly do a lot else within the combo. And if you open like a really wonky hand that you can't get to any of your extra super heavy sand bits, Machina Fortress acts as a really good extender for this deck to pop off like it's meant to within its combo. It doesn't get you to as much as you would like, but a lot of the time you can still get to a pretty good fucking board that a lot of decks find incredibly difficult to out. Even the more modern decks like more Pearlies, more super heavy Samurais in their mirror matches, Branded, Kashtira, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that is the Machina package for this deck. So now let's move on to the other packages. And here we have the Infinitrack package, the actual smallest package of the entire deck. You don't play many, if less than 5 Infinitracks. And let me show you what Infinitracks we do play for the sake of this combo. So we have Anchor Drill, the one you actually don't use. It's for its intended purpose. It doesn't summon anything, it never manipulates any levels. It's normally just tribute fodder for, well, the next card that we have here. We have one of the weirder ratios that I didn't normally agree with at first, but I do now. And that's 2 Infinitrack Brutal Dozer. This is the card you generally get off of Cliff or Genius in your full combo if you don't have it already. In a lot of instances, this card is one of those cards that you either don't want to draw or you want to draw sometimes. A lot of the time you would prefer it to be in the deck. And now we have the final Infinitrack monster, and that is Infinitrack Tunneler. If you guys play normal Superheavy Samurai, you very much well know this card already, because it is the card you start off with your Cliff or Genius in combo, as it allows you to banish itself, target 5 cards in your graveyard or 5 Earth Machines in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, draw 2 cards. What's not to love about having an in-engine searchable part of Avarice? So yeah, that is all we have for the Infinitracks, a very small package in comparison to literally everything else. Now, let's move on to the generic machines. And now we have, obviously, as you can see on screen, the generic machine package. So let's not waste any more time. We have the one Garnet you don't particularly want to draw all the time. That's Ancient Gearbox. This card you actually do summon, believe it or not. You summon it off of the Pendulum summon that you would do for your Brutal Dozer search. Obviously, if you Pendulum summon it and a Superheavy Samurai bike to the zones Cliff or Genius points to, which allows you to search for a level 5 or higher Earth Machine type monster. Now, we have the card that actually shot up in price because of this deck, Therion King Regulus. Originally, this version of the deck was to play a third, and I will eventually be getting said third copy sooner rather than later. But I currently don't have the time nor the money to spend on the third Regulus. So that has been replaced with one of the new Superheavy Samurai cards that would normally be played at 2. Then we have Super Express Bullet Train, which obviously is a one-of in even standard Earth Machine decks. You don't really play it at more than one until you get to like more train heavier focus builds. And then we finally have 2 Heavy Freight Train Derricrane. Sometimes this card is actually good to draw 2 of, especially in a 60 card pile deck, because it allows you to have a free extender if you have like a really particularly wonky hand that sometimes this deck does give out. So yeah, that's the generic machine package. Now let's get on to the piece de resistance of this deck, Superheavy Samurai. And this is where the long part of the video comes in when it comes to my explanations. Superheavy Samurai has now evolved into something that the deck was trying to be. It was trying to be a combo deck that would attack in defense. It doesn't do the latter so much now, unless you play like a really old pure variant of it. But even the pure variant nowadays just makes a shit ton of negates, makes a shit ton of interruptions through Baron, Apollosa, Borolo, Savage Dragon. But this deck doesn't do that. This version of Superheavy Samurai uses the engine to facilitate massive explosive plays using its extra deck monsters and some of the new monsters that I will get into right now. So, we have 3 Superheavy Samurai Motorbike. This card is the generic searchable rotor card of the entire Superheavy Samurai part of the deck. It searches literally any Superheavy Samurai if you discard it from hand, and it has an effect that you can target any machine monster you control and increase its level by 2. In the combo, you generally would increase its own level by 2 to make a Spring Guns Berrymaker with another level 4 that you had summoned off of the Pendulum Summon. Yes, this deck now does Pendulum Summon through Cliff or Genius. And now we have the big motherfucker, 3 Superheavy Samurai Prodigy Wakaushi. You never understand what a 1-card combo does unless you play it. And by fucking god, Wakaushi is a 1-card wombo. Literally, even the older cards that allow you to get to Wakaushi facilitate massive boards, especially with if you go full combo with something like Soul Piercer that allows you to get to Baron on your 5th summon, or even go to massive negate boards, or even have monsters like Super Dora, Baron, Regulus, Machina, Citadel that all have at least 2500 attack, and in some cases at least 3500. Absolutely mad. Then we have 3 Superheavy Samurai Big Benkei, the new Pendulum Scale. This card is incredibly strong because it searches you all of the new stuff, or any Superheavy Samurai soul card that you need from your deck to your hand. It is absolutely mental, and in a lot of instances you search Soul Peacemaker to then get more combos that you actually need. And finally, for the new stuff, we just have 1 Superheavy Samurai Soul Gaia booster. This card is played in the original Superheavy Samurai builds when obviously you play the pure variant, but in this instance you play it at 1 because you only use it once in the combo and you search it only once. So yeah, that is the new stuff. Now let's get on to some of the older stuff. We have 3 Superheavy Samurai Soul Piercer. This card is incredibly bonkers. How is this card fair? You can literally send it to graveyard by any means, including with like links or synchro material that allow you to search any Superheavy Samurai card from any Superheavy Samurai monster from deck to hand. How? This is not once per turn, and I can continue doing it as much as I like. Then we have one of the newer ones, Superheavy Samurai Wagon. Wagon, obviously, when you normal summon it, it switches itself into defense, and then if you control an attack position monster, you can switch it out, then search for any Superheavy Samurai Soul monster from deck to hand. So Soul Piercer, Soul Guider, so search literally anything. Then we have Soul Piercer. This card is incredibly good and it facilitates the combo with this next card, Superheavy Samurai Scales. Scales is one of the cards that, because of the new Superheavy Samurai support, absolutely shot up in price, because obviously it is the way that you can facilitate plays going into rank 4s like Gear, Gig and X, as you'll see later in the video, and even going into more rank 8 synchros like in the pure version with Borrelo Savage Dragon, as well as even some other cards like the new Bestial Dispatter, as well as even Chaos Angel if they can get to it with a light or dark tuner, because for some fucking reason Wakauchi's a dark level 4 tuner. Of course it is, why wouldn't it be? So yeah, that is the main part of the deck. Now we're going to get on to something that I don't particularly do a lot. That is play a shit ton of non-engine. And this is the point where this deck gets absolutely bonkers in terms of interruption, because alongside ending on something like Baron de Fleur, Regulars, Machina Citadel, Sagas, and so many more, this version of the deck, with the help that I have had, plays 17 hand traps. That's more than a lot of people would even want to. That's more than a lot of people can play in their general decks. But yeah, because obviously we have 60 card pile deck, we can play this amount of non-engine and it not affect our consistency whatsoever, and in fact it actually helps it. So we have 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. Branded is still a deck in this format, and in fact it actually gets a lot worse to deal with, because they can just synchro someone with Cartesia or with Guiding Queen. They confuse on your opponent's turn like it's a motherfucker. It's such a hard thing to out, and this makes it a little bit easier. Despite Cash Hero still being a deck in this format, I am playing 3 Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is an incredibly strong card if you use it at the right time, especially against rogue decks. Sometimes it works against Pearly, sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of the time you just have to absolutely fucking run for it if you can get it. Then the card that's incredibly good in the mirror match, if you go first, John Lockbird. John Lockbird is one of those cards that actually facilitate a lot of, you can't fucking play the game now, please stop that. A lot of the time it's one of those things where you don't particularly want to play a massively floodgate card like Droll or a floodgate hand trap, but sometimes you gotta. And now one of the new hand traps that are actually getting a lot of love now, but it has been for quite a while, that is the Gamma package. Cypherane Gear Gamma and Cypherane Gear Driver are incredibly good cards if you have no cards or no monsters on your side of the field, because if my stuff gets ashed, I can just Gamma in my own turn, make Axel Synchro Stardust Dragon and make an early Baron, because I can summon back the Gamma myself. So yeah, we have the Gamma package, and then we have 3 Nibiru. Despite this card not being as good as it used to be, I might toss and turn it out for 3 Ghost Ogre against something like Pearly. It still does incredibly well when you have massively reliant combo heavy decks that a lot of people sometimes do fuck up on because they're not respecting a big fucking rock. And then we have 3 Kashtira Fenrir. Despite this card being very controversial to a lot of people, including myself, this card is incredibly strong for surprisingly how cheap it is. Like, you can buy a playset for like 50 quid if you're very lucky like I was. I paid around 55 for my playset, 45 or 45 for 2 from one guy, and then a couple extra quid from one of my mates. Yeah, Kashtira Fenrir is in a really is a really good card for this deck because you can just special summon it, search another one, and then if your opponent activates a monster effect in your turn that actually leaves something on the field, you can just banish it face down, and it's an incredibly powerful play. Now, let's talk about one of the more controversial picks I decided to make for this deck. As you can see on screen here, guys, we have 3 Clockwork Knight as the final playset for this deck. A lot of people would say, why the fuck are you playing 3 spells in a Superheavy Samurai deck that says, oh, you can't play when you have spells in graveyard? I would be inclined to agree with them a lot of the time. However, if you guys have ever actually read Clockwork Knight, it allows you to banish itself from the graveyard as well as discard a card to search any Earth Machine monster from your deck to your hand. And by that point, once you've banished it, because the banish and the discard is cost, you have free access over your Superheavy Samurai effects again, and you are able to combo off if this for whatever reason gets ashed or drolled or whatever. So yeah, that's the reason I'm also playing this, and I also want to eventually try a Cyber Dragon tech as well as, or eventually try a Cyber Dragon tech to see if a Chimeritic Fortress Dragon plus this card does anything in a 60 card combo deck. Doubt it will, but I want to try it. So yeah, now let's move on to the extra deck. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are finally here with the extra deck where this deck thrives. This deck, despite it going through literally 12 of its cards in the extra deck, they all serve a purpose of some description. And let's get over those purposes now. We have 1 Infinitrack Goliath, because obviously, despite us playing 2 generally and a lot of Earth Machine builds, you don't particularly want to see it all that often these days, because, well, you only make 1 Infinitrack Xyz monster in the entire deck, being Infinitrack Riverstormer. This card is incredibly good for facilitating the more late game plays, so searching for one of the level 10s for Dora in the final combo, or just going through trying to get extra cards to try and keep your board as formidable and as steady as possible. So yeah, now let's move on to the only Superheavy Samurai card that's in my extra deck, and that is Superheavy Samurai Scarecrow. This card is incredibly potent, surprisingly, because the way that its effect works, you can discard a Superheavy Samurai card and then special summon the card you just discarded, or special summon the monster you just discarded. It's absolutely mental. I didn't realize this until it was more of a recent discovery, but this card is incredibly good, but the problem is this is where the deck can choke a lot. If this goes so good, the effect actually does not resolve because there is no link monster for this, or for the summon to happen, because there's no link zone on the field, or no zone the link monster points to. So now we have the generic machine links. We have the Clifford Genius. Clifford Genius is an incredibly good card for this deck because it allows you to search literally any Earth Machine that's level 5 or higher when you do the Pendulum Summon in the combo. You also have the card that is now surprisingly expensive, which is Ancient Gear Ballista, which obviously searches you Ancient Gear Box, then searches you Infinitrack Anchor Drill or Infinitrack Tunnel, depending on which one you want. You probably want the Anchor Drill a lot of the time. Then the final link, Double-Headed Anger Knuckle. This card is also incredibly strong for what it needs to be doing for this deck, because of the way it just allows you to bring back literally any level 10 or higher Earth Machine monster, or even Machine monster for that matter, to them, or to special summon it also field from graveyard, and then also have that be a quick effect, as well as just generally being a good generic link to for machine monsters. Now we have the Xyz portion of the deck. We have 1 Gear Gigan X, which is vital for the combo. I did think about playing the second, but I don't know where to fit it right now. We have Springgan's Merrymaker and the Gigantic Champion Sargaz package, because obviously you do need to find a way to search Regulus in this deck. And obviously, if you know me, you know what this deck does. You then have the Train package, because obviously this deck still is Earth Machine at heart. It still plays a lot of the big motherfucking trains. It ends on Dora like it's meant to, and it does a lot. And obviously we have Zeus. Obviously, if you're playing an Xyz deck, you need to play Zeus. It is an incredibly good card. Non-once per turn board wipes that send and not destroy. Fucking absolutely. And then we have the Synchro package for this deck. Jesus Christ, this one was expensive to get along. We have Axel Synchro Stardust Dragon, which this card went from, okay, this is like a tenner, to now this is like 40 fucking pounds because of Superheavy Samurai. Yes, I picked the worst deck to play for this format, the most expensive, smile. And then we have the other card, which I've been trying to get my hands on for fucking ages, Baron de Fleur. This card is incredibly good just in generic decks that can make it, and I have been trying to get one for a while, and it has eluded me time and time again until Andrew happened to pull one out of a 1 pack of fucking Maze of Memories that he brought out of locals. Fuck you, Andrew, you know what you did. You made me spend a lot more money than I wanted to. Fuck you. But yeah, that is the extra deck for this, well, for this deck. And now we're going to get on to the side deck. Now, a lot of the time side decks are format dependent, so please keep that in mind when I am going through this side deck so you guys can understand why I'm doing things the way I am. So, for the side deck, we have one Machina Overdrive. The reason I'm playing this is the same reason I'm playing Clockwork Knight, because you can banish it, and in this case you can target up, or you can shuffle 3 machine monsters into the deck and draw a card. That card is also incredibly strong because it is one of the few cards in the entire game that will resolve as much as it can. So say if you get rid of one of my targets already, so say if I only have 2 targets left in my graveyard, I still shuffle those 2 targets into the deck and draw a card to resolve the effect. It is absolutely mad. Then the card that I'm more iffy on playing in the main deck, and that's 3 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This card is incredibly effective in the mirror match and incredibly effective against Pearly, because a lot of the time they rely on that normal summon of Pearly or Pearly Lily, which allows you to Ghost Ogre it. They can't do much else unless they play around it like a motherfucker, which sometimes they can, but a lot of the time they can't do that. And now we are getting to one of the cards that I have expected to be using for this deck for quite a while, but I didn't expect to be using it so soon, and that's 3 of Jizukiro, the Star Destroying Kaiju. Despite this being a light machine and not an earth machine, this card is still incredibly good for massive towers removal, such as Expurly Noir, Geomathmech Final Sigma, and soon to be the Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid Neo Tempest Terahertz we see in Mathmech quite a lot now. But yeah, we still got to prepare for Cash, because Cash is a fucking dickhead of a deck. We have 3 Artifact Lancia. And obviously, as you've probably already told, because we are still playing Superheavy Samurai, there are barely any spells and traps in the side deck either, because we need to make sure we can still keep the super heavy effects going on. Now, this is something I'm wanting to try, but I haven't had the chance to try it yet, and I am testing out 3 Denko Sekka. Denko Sekka is incredibly good against something like Labyrinth or Trap Tricks, or even the soon-to-be Vanquish Soul, which sets up a lot of traps and to set spells and cards. It's one of those things where I feel like this card, especially eventually with the new Unchained support, is going to become a lot better. And because we need a 4th Fenrir, we're going to play probably the better Fenrir, Dino Wrestler Pankratops. This card can come to 3 any day. It's incredibly good, especially if, well, you're going second, you need to find a way to break a board. And yeah, obviously I can't play spells and traps, but I am playing one more spell and trap because I might need it every now and again. That's Called by the Grave. Called by, despite me playing a deck that does rely on hand traps itself quite a lot, this card I will probably take out anyway, just for the sole reason I don't want it to conflict with the rest of the deck, because I can't get it out of my graveyard for whatever reason. So yeah, that is the actual deck profile.